In the heart of ancient Rome, where blood stains the sand of the Colosseum and the roar of the crowd determines fate, stands Marcus, the shadow of death, a gladiator who has never known defeat. For 7 years he has killed without mercy, his soul as scarred as his body. Lady Livia Aurelius, a young patrician woman, trapped in a loveless marriage to a cruel senator, witnesses Marcus spare a fallen opponent, a moment of humanity that ignites something within her privileged but empty heart. When she learns that her husband owns Marcus and plans to have him killed after one final spectacle to eliminate a political rival, she makes a desperate decision. She will try to save the unsavable. She will try to find the man beneath the monster. She will try to love someone the world says is too strong, too broken, too far gone for redemption. But in ancient Rome, where power is everything and love is weakness, trying might cost them both everything. The glider's sword hovered above the fallen man's throat, ready to deliver death as it had 100 times before. 50,000 Romans held their breath, thumbs ready to point down, eager for blood. But in the patrician's box, a young woman in silk and gold found herself whispering a prayer to gods she'd stopped believing in. "Please," Livia breathed, her fingers white against the marble rail. "Show them you're more than death." The gladiator, Marcus, they called him, though she doubted that was his true name, stood like a statue carved from bronze and scars. 7 years undefeated, 7 years of killing. The crowd began their chant, "Death, death, death." And then, impossibly, he stepped back. The sword lowered. The arena abritted in confusion and fury, but Livia saw something in that moment that would haunt her for the rest of her days, a flash of humanity in eyes everyone said were empty of soul. "Foolish gladiator," her husband, Senator Gaius Aurelius, snarled beside her. "He forgets who owns him. I'll remind him tonight." His thick fingers found her wrist, squeezing until she winced. "Just as I remind you, my dear wife." But Livia barely heard him. Her eyes remained fixed on the gladiator as guards rushed to escort him from the arena. Just before he disappeared into the theos beneath the Colosseum, he looked up. Their eyes met across the impossible distance, and in that moment, Livia Aurelius, who had everything except freedom, saw her reflection in a slave who had nothing except the choice to kill or die. Dawn broke blood-red over Rome, as if the gods themselves warned of what was to come. Livia hadn't slept, couldn't sleep, with Marcus's kiss still burning on her lips and his words echoing in her mind. She stood at her window, watching the city wake, when Claudia burst through her door without knocking. "My lady, terrible news." The older woman's face was white as parchment. "The senator, he's arranged a special match. Today, Marcus is to fight 3 men at once. All condemned criminals promised freedom if they kill him." The blood drained from Livia's face. 3? But that's, even for him, that's murder. It's worse. Claudia glanced over her shoulder before continuing in a whisper. "I overheard the senator speaking with his men. The criminals have been promised extra coin to make it especially brutal. He wants Marcus, not just dead, but destroyed. He called it a lesson in the price of mercy." Livia sank onto her couch, mind racing. "When?" "Midday. The emperor himself will attend. Your husband presents it as a special entertainment in honor of—" "I need to see him." Livia rose abruptly. "Marcus, before—" "My lady, you cannot. The senator has already left for the Colosseum, but his spies remain. If they report, then they report." Livia's voice held steel. She didn't know she possessed. "Claudia, I've been dead for 2 years in this marriage. Last night, for the first time, I remembered what it was to feel alive. I won't let him die without knowing someone sees him as more than a weapon." Claudia studied her mistress's face, then sighed. "There is a way. The gladiators are taken to the Colosseum's holding cells 3 hours before combat. My nephew works there, but my lady, the risk, I'll take it." The underbelly of the Colosseum was a world unto itself, a labyrinth of cells, medical chambers, and preparation rooms that smelled of fear, blood, and approaching death. Claudia's nephew, a thin youth named Quintus, led them through passages few patricians had ever seen. "The condemned gladiators are kept here," he whispered, pointing to a row of L's. "But Domine, please, if anyone finds you, they won't." Livia pressed a gold Aurelius into his palm. "You were never here." She found Marcus in the third cell, and her heart clenched at the sight. They'd cleaned his wounds, but only to make him presentable for death. He sat in meditation, eyes closed, already preparing his spirit for what seemed inevitable. "Planning to die without a fight?" she asked softly. His eyes snapped open, widening in shock. "Livia, you can't. How did you?" "A lady has her ways." She knelt by the bars, drinking in the sight of him. In the torchlight she could see new bruises layered over old scars, a map of violence written on his skin. "I heard about the match. Then you know why you shouldn't be here." But even as he spoke, he moved closer to the bars, drawn like iron to lodestone. 3 against 1. "My husband's cruelty knows no bounds. I've faced worse odds. Have you?" She reached through the bars, finding his hand. "Have you ever faced them the day after, remembering what it is to hope?" His fingers tightened around hers. "Livia, I won't let you die thinking you're alone, that you're nothing but a ghost that bleeds." Tears ran down her cheeks now. "Last night you asked when someone last touched you, with kindness. Let me ask you something else. When did someone last tell you that you matter? That your life has worth beyond the sword?" "Never." The word was barely a whisper. "Then hear it now." She pressed his hands to her heart, letting him feel its racing beat. "You matter to me, Marcus. Not the gladiator, not the weapon, not the slave. You, the man who chose mercy, the man who knew the cost and chose it anyway. I am going to die today, Livia." "No." Her fierce denial echoed off stone walls. "You're going to live. You're going to fight like you've never fought before. Not for my husband, not for Rome, not for the crowd. For me, for the chance that somewhere beyond this madness, there might be a world where a princess and a gladiator could simply be a woman and a man." He laughed, a broken sound. "You speak of impossible things. Yesterday, showing mercy was impossible. Yet you did it." She leaned her forehead against the bars, as close as she could get. "So do another impossible thing. Live, for me. And if I do, your husband will only find new ways to kill me. Then we'll face that when it comes. But first, survive today. Promise me." He was quiet so long she feared he'd refuse. Then, slowly, he brought her hands to his lips, kissing each palm with reverent tenderness. "For you, Domina, only for you. My name," she whispered. "Say my name." "Livia." He breathed it against her skin. "I will try to live, Livia. Though the gods themselves stand against it, I will try." Footsteps echoed in the corridor. Guards approaching. Their stolen moment was ending. "Wait," Marcus said suddenly. He pulled something from beneath his rough tunic, a small wooden carving on a leather cord. "My sister made this. Before. It's all I have left of my old life. If I fall today, you won't. If I do," he insisted, pressing it into her hands, "know that you gave a dead man 3 days of life. That's more than 7 years of victories ever did." She clutched the carving, a rough but beautiful rendering of a soaring eagle. "Then take this." She unpinned a brooch from her stola, a golden dolphin that had been her mother's. "So, you remember you're not fighting alone." He took it with shaking hands, just as the guards rounded the corner. "Domina, Livia." The guard captain's shock was evident. "You should not be in these depths." "I go where I please," she replied with all the imperial hauteur she could muster, though tears still marked her cheeks. "Or do you presume to question a consul's daughter?" "No, Domina, but your husband. My husband will hear nothing of this. Unless you wish to explain why you allowed me to wander unescorted into danger." She swept past them, Claudia's nephew materializing to guide them out. But at the corridor's turn, she looked back. Marcus stood at the bars, the golden dolphin clutched in his fist, watching her with eyes that held too much emotion for words. She pressed her fingers to her lips, then extended them toward him, a kiss carried on air and desperate hope. Then she was gone, leaving him alone with his promise and the impossible task of keeping it. The Colosseum had never been more packed. 50,000 Romans filled every tier, their bloodlust palpable in the afternoon heat. In the imperial box, Emperor Hadrian himself sat in purple-trimmed toga, his sharp eyes missing nothing. Beside him, Senator Gaius preened like a peacock, already drunk on wine and anticipated vengeance. Livia sat in her designated place, her face a mask of calm, while her heart threatened to tear from her chest. The wooden eagle carving lay hidden beneath her stola, pressed against her skin like a talisman. "Oh, wife," Gaius slurred as the pre-fight entertainment concluded. "Come to watch your defender meet his end. How touching." "I come because appearances matter," she replied coolly, "as you so often remind me." "Indeed they do. Which is why, after today's lesson, you'll remember your place, and if not," his hand found her thigh, squeezing hard enough to bruise. "There are ways to train a disobedient wife, just as there are ways to break a defiant slave." Trumpets blared, announcing the main event. The crowd roared as the gladiators entered. First, the three condemned men, each a killer in his own right, promised freedom for Marcus's death. They carried different weapons, a trident and net, a pair of curved swords, and a massive war hammer. Then Marcus emerged, and the crowd's roar became deafening. He'd never looked more magnificent or more doomed. They'd given him only basic armor, a statement about his expected survival, but he walked with the same lethal grace as always, his sword catching the sunlight. As he reached the arena's center, his eyes found Livia in the patrician box. For a heartbeat that lasted eternity, their gazes held. She saw him touch something at his chest, her mother's brooch, hidden beneath his armor. She pressed her hand to where his carving lay against her heart. "Live," she mouthed. He inclined his head slightly. "A promise renewed. Citizens of Rome," the arena master bellowed. "Today you witness special justice. The gladiator Marcus, who dared show mercy without his master's permission, faces three of the Empire's most vicious killers. Let the blood tell the tale of defiance punished." The crowd bayed for blood. Gaius leaned forward, eyes glittering with sadistic pleasure. The emperor watched with detached interest, and in the sand below, one man faced three, carrying the weight of a promise and the memory of a forbidden kiss. The fight began. Marcus moved like liquid lightning, every motion economical, lethal. The man with the warhammer charged first, weapon swinging in a devastating arc. Marcus rolled beneath it, came up running, and opened a red line across the man's thigh before dancing away. The net fighter tried to capitalize, casting his net in a perfect throw. But Marcus had fought Retieri before. He twisted at the last second, letting the net whistle past, then lunged forward before the man could ready his trident. Steel met flesh, and the first killer fell. 2 against 1 now, but the condemned men had learned caution. They circled like wolves, coordinating their attacks. The hammer wielder's wounds slowed him, but desperation made him dangerous. The dual sword fighter was fresh, skilled, hungry for promised freedom. "Kill him!" Gaius screamed, spittle flying. "What are you waiting for? Kill him!" The crowd had gone strangely quiet, sensing they witnessed something beyond mere sport. This wasn't entertainment, it was survival distilled to its purest form. The swordsman feinted left, then came right in a blur of steel. Marcus parried desperately, but the hammer wielder was there, weapon descending. Marcus threw himself sideways, but not quite fast enough. The hammer clipped his shoulder, spinning him to the sand. Livia bit through her lip to keep from screaming. The killers pressed their advantage, weapons raised for the killing blow, and Marcus exploded from the sand, like a phoenix from ashes. His sword took the hammer wielder in the stomach, a fatal thrust, but the movement left him exposed, and the swordsman's blade found his side, parting armor and flesh. Blood painted the sand as both men staggered apart. Yes, Gaius was on his feet. Finish it, finish the dog. Marcus pressed a hand to his side, crimson seeping between his fingers. The swordsman circled, sensing victory. The crowd held its breath. Livia found herself standing, though she didn't remember rising. "Marcus," she whispered. He must have heard, impossibly across the distance and noise. His head turned slightly toward her, and she saw him straighten, saw something kindle in his eyes. The swordsman attacked in a flurry of steel. Marcus met him strike for strike, their blades singing a deadly song. But Marcus was losing blood, slowing, and everyone could see it. "He dies," Gaius crowed. "Do you see, wife? Your champion falls." The swordsman pressed harder, driving Marcus back toward the wall. A vicious combination sent Marcus's sword spinning from his grip. The crowd gasped. Defenseless now, wounded, Marcus faced his executioner. The swordsman raised his blades for the killing strike, and Marcus caught them, bare-handed, blood making his grip slick. He caught the descending blades. The swordsman's eyes widened in shock. For a moment, they stood frozen, a tableau of impossible strength against certain death. Then Marcus twisted. The sword spun from the killer's grip, and Marcus's hand found his throat. A quick, efficient snap, and the last of the condemned fell to the sand. Silence. 50,000 Romans sat in absolute silence, witnessing something beyond their understanding. A man with no weapon, wounded, bleeding, had defeated 3 killers with his bare hands. Marcus stood in the center of the arena, blood painting him crimson, chest heaving. His eyes found Livia again, and she saw him mouth a single word: "Tried." Then his knees buckled. No, the scream tore from Livia's throat before she could stop it. The crowd erupted, some cheering, some calling for his death, all acknowledging they'd witnessed something legendary. In the imperial box, Hadrian leaned forward with interest. "Extraordinary," the emperor murmured. "Senator Aurelius, your gladiator fights like the heroes of old." Gaius's face had gone purple with rage. "He should be dead, but he isn't." Hadrian's tone held warning, and the crowd seems quite taken with his survival. "Listen." Indeed, a chant was building. "Marcus, Marcus, what says the emperor?" The arena master called out. "Life or death for the victor." Hadrian stood, the crowd falling silent. His thumb hovered, the power of life and death in a simple gesture. "Caesar," Livia found herself speaking, dropping to her knees. "I beg mercy for the gladiator. He has proven the gods favor him. To kill him now would be to spite their will." "You dare address the emperor?" Gaius raised his hand to strike her. "Peace, Senator." Hadrian's voice cut like a blade. "Your wife shows proper Roman piety, and she makes a point. The gladiator has indeed proven something today. The question is, what?" He looked down at Marcus, who knelt in the sand, barely conscious but still alive. "He showed mercy yesterday," Hadrian mused. "Today he showed the price of mercy is not weakness, but strength beyond measure. Perhaps Rome needs such examples." His thumb turned up. "Life," the arena master bellowed. "Caesar grants life." The crowd exploded in approval. Medici rushed onto the sand, surrounding Marcus. But Livia's relief was short-lived as Gaius grabbed her arm, his fingers digging deep.
"You think you've won something?" he hissed in her ear. "Your gladiator lives today, but tomorrow, and the day after? I own him, wife. I own you both, and I will teach you the price of making me look weak before Caesar." As Marcus was carried from the arena, Livia caught one last glimpse of his face. Even half-conscious, his eyes found hers, and she saw in them not triumph, but worry. He'd kept his promise. He'd lived. But they both knew this was far from over. The games had ended, but the real battle for their lives had just begun. Livia sat at her window, still dressed in the finery she'd worn to the games, though night had long since claimed the city.
My lady, her handmaiden Claudia ventured softly. The senator has retired. You should rest. Tell me, Claudia, Livia said, not turning from the window. What do you know of the gladiator Marcus? Claudia's intake of breath was sharp. My lady, such questions I'm not asking as the senator's wife. Livia finally turned, and Claudia saw tears threatening to spill from eyes the color of autumn honey. I'm asking as a woman who saw something today she cannot explain. The older woman's face softened. Claudia had raised Livia since childhood, had held her through her mother's death, had dressed her for a wedding that was more transaction than celebration. They say he was a prince, Claudia whispered, glancing toward the door. From the Germanic tribes. His entire family slaughtered when he was 15. The senator bought him 3 years later, already half mad from the fighting pits. But my lady, he's killed more men than Rome has fountains. Why do you ask? Because today he didn't kill. Livia rose, pacing to her cosmetics table. For 7 years he's been death incarnate. Today he chose mercy. Why? Perhaps he grows tired of blood. Or perhaps, Livia said slowly, he remembers what it was to be human. A crash echoed from somewhere deep in the villa, followed by shouting. Livia and Claudia exchanged glances before hurrying to the door. In the courtyard below, torches revealed a scene that made Livia's blood freeze. Marcus knelt in chains, his broad back already striped with fresh whip marks. Senator Aurelius stood over him, wine-flushed and furious, a whip in his fat hand. You dare show mercy without my permission. Gaius roared. You are not a man, you are my property. My weapon. The whip descended again. Marcus didn't make a sound, but Livia saw his muscles tense, saw the way his hands clenched even in chains. He could break free. She knew it. Everyone knew it. But he didn't. Please, husband. Livia found herself on the stairs before she realized she'd moved. The hour is late. Surely this can wait. Silence. Gaius whirled on her, and she saw the same cruelty in his eyes that had made their wedding night a terror, rather than a joy. Return to your chambers, wife, before I remind you of your place as well. But Livia's feet remained planted. Her eyes found Marcus again, and this time he was looking back at her. Blood ran from a cut above his eye, but his gaze was steady, almost protective. I said leave. Gaius raised the whip toward her. No. The word fell into the courtyard like a stone into still water. Even the guards shifted uncomfortably. What did you say? Gaius's voice dropped to a whisper, more terrifying than his shouts. I said no. Livia descended the remaining stairs, her silk stola whispering against stone. Beat your gladiator if you must, husband. But I am the daughter of Consul Aurelius. I married you to save my father's political career, but I am not your slave. You are my wife. In Rome that is the same thing. Then Rome is wrong. The slap came fast, spinning her to the ground. Stars exploded across her vision, but through them she heard something that chilled her more than her husband's rage. The sound of chains groaning under impossible pressure. She looked up to see Marcus half risen, every muscle taut with barely contained violence. His eyes, fixed on Gaius, promised death. No, she whispered, and somehow, impossibly, he heard her. Their eyes met again, and she shook her head slightly, slowly. With visible effort, Marcus sank back to his knees. Chain him in the lower cells, Gaius spat at the guards. No food for 3 days. Let hunger remind him of obedience. He grabbed Livia's arm, hauling her to her feet. As for you, dear wife, you'll learn that defiance has consequences. As she was dragged back to the villa, Livia caught one last glimpse of Marcus being led away. His lips moved, forming words she couldn't hear but somehow understood. Thank you. 3 days passed in a haze of locked doors and silent meals. Gaius had confined her to her chambers, posting guards who refused to meet her eyes. But Claudia, clever Claudia, found ways to bring news. He survives, she whispered on the second night, pretending to arrange Livia's hair. The guards say he hasn't made a sound, just sits in the dark like a statue. And my husband, drunk as usual. There are whispers, my lady. The emperor himself was displeased by the gladiator's mercy. Some say it made him look weak. The senator fears for his position. On the third night, Claudia brought more than news. She brought a key. "The kitchen slaves owe me favors," she said simply. "The guards change shift at midnight. You'll have perhaps an hour. Claudia, if we're caught, then I'll say I stole the key to visit my nephew in the gladiator cells." "You knew nothing." The older woman gripped Livia's hands. "My lady, I've watched you die slowly in this marriage for 2 years. Today is the first time I've seen you truly alive since your wedding day." Midnight found Livia creeping through shadows, her heart thundering against her ribs. The villa's lower levels were a maze of storage rooms and cells, lit only by sparse torches. She followed Claudia's directions until the smell of blood and unwashed bodies told her she was close. The gladiator cells were worse than she'd imagined. Iron bars sectioned off spaces barely large enough for a man to lie down. Most were empty. Gladiators were valuable property, usually kept in better conditions at the ludus. But in the farthest cell, in complete darkness, she found him. "Marcus?" Movement in the shadows. Then his voice, hoarse from thirst. "You should not be here, Domina." She moved closer, letting torchlight from the corridor illuminate his cell. He sat against the far wall, chains binding his wrists to iron rings. The whip marks had been left untended, some still seeping blood. "Neither should you," she said softly. "This is my fault. If I hadn't, no." He shifted, and she saw his face clearly for the first time without the arena's distance between them. Beneath the beard and scars, he couldn't be much older than her own 23 years. "Your defiance, it reminded me of what?" A bitter smile touched his lips. "That courage exists in places other than facing death." She knelt by the bars, pulling a water skin from beneath her cloak. "Claudia thought you might need this." He moved forward with difficulty, the chains just long enough to reach the bars. As he drank, she found herself studying his hands, scarred and powerful, hands that had ended so many lives, yet they trembled slightly as they held the water skin. "Why did you spare him?" she asked. "The gladiator in the arena?" Marcus was quiet so long she thought he wouldn't answer. "Then he had a son. In the crowd, a boy perhaps 6 years old. I saw him just before he returned the water skin. I was 6 when I watched my father die. I couldn't create another version of myself. But the risk? What risk? Death?" He laughed, a sound like grinding stone. "Domina, I die every time I enter that arena. My body simply hasn't realized it yet." "Don't say that." "Why not? It's truth. I am already dead, have been since the day your husband bought me. I am merely a ghost that bleeds." "No," the word came out fiercer than she intended. "A ghost wouldn't have shown mercy. A ghost wouldn't have tried to protect me from my husband's blow." His eyes widened slightly. "You saw that. I felt it. The guards were terrified. They knew you could have broken free, killed him, killed them all, but you didn't. Why?" He looked away. "You said no. That's not an answer, isn't it?" His eyes found hers again, and she saw something in them that made her breath catch. "For 7 years I have heard nothing but kill and die and fight. Then a patrician lady looks at a monster and says no, as if I were a man who could choose to listen. You are a man. I am a slave, in chains perhaps, but not in soul. I saw that today." She reached through the bars, hesitating just short of touching his face. "May I?" He went very still. "Your husband would kill us both." "My husband is passed out in wine and won't wake until noon." Her fingers found his cheek, gentle against the bruises. "When did someone last touch you with kindness?" His eyes closed, and she felt him lean almost imperceptibly into her touch. "I don't remember." "Then remember this. She shouldn't have kissed him. Every law of Rome, every social convention, every instinct of self-preservation screamed against it. But Livia had been dying by degrees in a marble prison, and here in this dungeon, she felt suddenly brilliantly alive. His lips were cracked from thirst, tasting of blood and desperation. For a heartbeat he didn't respond, frozen by shock. Then his chained hands rose to cup her face through the bars, and he kissed her back with a gentleness that broke her heart. "Livia," he whispered against her lips, "not Domina, not my lady, just her name, spoken like a prayer. I'll get you out," she promised. "I don't know how, but no." He pulled back, though his hands remained on her face. "Your husband would hunt us both, and he struggled with words. "I have too much blood on my hands to touch something as clean as you. I'm not clean, I'm not pure, I'm trapped, just like you. Your cage has silk, mine has iron. But perhaps," he stroked her cheek with his thumb, "perhaps that makes us understand each other." Footsteps echoed in the corridor above. Her hour was ending. "I'll come back," she promised, pulling away reluctantly. "Don't. It's too dangerous." But she was already disappearing into the shadows, leaving Marcus alone with the ghost of her kiss and the terrible, beautiful feeling of hope stirring in a heart he'd thought long dead. As she reached her chambers, Claudia waited with worried eyes. "My lady, he's human," Livia said simply. "Beneath it all, he's heartbreakingly human. And that makes him worth the risk." Livia thought of his hands gentle on her face, of 7 years of forced killing, of a small boy watching his father die. Yes, God help me, yes. Outside, Rome slept, unaware that in the depths of a senator's villa, 2 souls had found each other across an impossible divide. The games would continue. Blood would flow. The powerful would feast while the powerless died for their entertainment. But something had changed in the darkness of a cell and the touch of forbidden lips. A gladiator had remembered mercy. A lady had remembered courage. And love, that most dangerous of Roman gods, had marked them both for either salvation or destruction. The medical chambers beneath the Colosseum reeked of blood and herbs. Marcus drifted in and out of consciousness, aware of hands stitching his wounds, of voices arguing above him. Through the haze of pain, one thought anchored him. He had lived. For her, he had lived. "The muscle is badly torn," someone was saying. "He may never fight again." "He'll fight." That was Gaius's voice, thick with wine and malice. "I'll see him die in that arena, if it's the last thing I do. Senator, with respect, he's valuable property. To waste him now, he ceased being valuable the moment he defied me. Patch him up. I have plans for him." Footsteps receded. Marcus forced his eyes open, finding the chamber empty save for an elderly medicus grinding herbs. The man noticed his awareness and approached. "Drink this," he said, offering a cup of something that smelled of poppies. "It will help with the pain." "No." Marcus's voice came out as a rasp. "Need clear head. Stubborn fool. You Germans are all the same." But the medicus set aside the cup. "The senator has gone to a feast celebrating your victory. Ironic, given how much he wanted you dead. How long? You've been unconscious for 3 hours. That wound in your side, another finger's width and you'd be meeting your ancestors." The old man studied him shrewdly. "Though something tells me you had reason to avoid that meeting." Marcus's hand moved instinctively to his chest, finding the small bump where Livia's brooch lay hidden beneath bandages. The medicus's eyes didn't miss the gesture. "Ah," the old man said softly, "that kind of reason. Boy, I've been patching up gladiators for 30 years. I've seen men fight for glory, for gold, for freedom. But a man who fights for love, that's the most dangerous kind." "I'm already dead," Marcus said. "The senator will see to that. Perhaps, or perhaps the gods have other plans." The medicus moved closer, lowering his voice. "There are whispers in the ludus. Your display today, some say you fought like Mars himself. Others wonder if perhaps it's time Rome remembered what heroes looked like." Before Marcus could respond, commotion erupted outside. Guards shouting, someone arguing, a woman's voice, imperious and familiar. His heart leaped, even as dread filled him. The door burst open, and Livia swept in, still in her arena finery, but with her stola now torn at the hem, as if she'd been running. Behind her, two guards looked helplessly at each other. "Domina, please," one ventured. "The senator gave orders." "The senator is drunk at his feast," Livia cut him off. "And I am still his wife, with every right to check on our property. Now leave us." The guards exchanged glances, but withdrew. The medicus looked between them, understanding dawning on his weathered face. "I'll need to fetch more bandages," he said diplomatically, shuffling out. The moment they were alone, Livia flew to Marcus's side, her hands hovering over his bandaged torso, as if afraid to touch. When you fell, I made a promise," he said simply. Tears ran down her cheeks as she sank onto the stool beside his pallet. "You magnificent fool! 3 men. How did you? You told me to do the impossible." His hand found hers, their fingers intertwining. "For you, Livia, I would fight all of Rome." "Don't say that. Don't even think it." She glanced toward the door, then back to him. "My husband is beyond rage. He's planning something. I heard him talking to his men." "I'm not afraid of death. I am." The words burst from her with surprising force. "I'm terrified of it. Not my own. I'd welcome that compared to my marriage. But yours? Marcus, I can't. I've only just found you. I can't lose you." He reached up with effort, cupping her face with one scarred hand. "You speak as if we have a future." "We could." She leaned into his touch, eyes blazing with desperate hope. "There are ways. I have money my husband doesn't know about. Inheritance from my mother. We could buy your freedom. He'll never sell me. Not now. I've become a symbol of his humiliation. Then we run. Tonight, while he's drunk. Claudia knows people who..." "Livia," he said her name gently, like a prayer. "You're asking me to make you a fugitive, to destroy your life." "What life?" She laughed bitterly. "You think this is living? Being beaten for speaking my mind, being used like a broodmare by a man who disgusts me. Watching the only person who's ever seen me as more than property, prepare to die for the crime of showing mercy." She pulled his hand from her face, pressing it to her heart. "Feel that? For 2 years it barely be. I was the walking dead. Just like you. But then I saw you spare that man, and something inside me woke up. Don't ask me to go back to sleep, Marcus. Don't ask me to watch you die when we could live." He was quiet for a long moment, studying her face, as if memorizing every detail. "Your husband will hunt us. Let him. The law will be on his side. Then we'll go beyond Roman law, to the northern provinces, or across the sea to Livia." He struggled to sit up, ignoring the pain that lanced through his side. "Look at me. Truly look. I'm a killer. I have ended more lives than I can count. My hands will never be clean. You deserve better than..." She silenced him with a kiss, fierce and desperate. When she pulled back, her eyes burned with conviction. "I don't want clean hands. I want honest ones. I want hands that know both how to kill and when not to. I want you, Marcus. All of you. The prince you were, the gladiator you became, the man you're remembering how to be." "You're mad," he whispered. "Perhaps. But tell me you don't feel it too. Tell me that when you fought today, you weren't imagining a life where you could wake beside me, without chains between us." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "Tell me you don't love me, and I'll walk away. I'll be the senator's perfect wife, and never trouble you again." He couldn't. The words wouldn't come, because somewhere between her first visit to his cell and the moment he'd caught those killing blades, Marcus the gladiator had become Marcus the man again. And Marcus the man was desperately, hopelessly in love with the brave, mad, beautiful woman before him. "I love you," he said, the words feeling strange on his tongue after so many years of silence. "Gods help me, Livia. I love you more than life." Then choose life, she urged. Choose us. How? The Medici keep poppy milk here, yes? Enough to make a man seem dead? Her mind was racing now, plans forming. Tomorrow is the feast of Vulcan. The entire household will be at the temples. If we time it right. The door opened, making them spring apart. But it was only Claudia, her face grim. My lady, we must go. The senator's feast is ending early. He's demanding your presence. 2 more minutes. Now, my lady, unless you wish him to find you here. Claudia's eyes softened as she looked at Marcus. I'll ensure the Gladiator has what he needs for healing. All of what he needs. The emphasis wasn't lost on any of them. Livia stood reluctantly, but Marcus caught her hand. The plan is madness. Then be mad with me. She squeezed his fingers one last time. Be ready. When the moment comes, we'll have only one chance. As she turned to go, he called out softly, Livia. She looked back. If we do this, if we run, I'll never be able to give you the life you deserve. No villa, no servants, no I'll have you, she interrupted. That's the only life I want. Then she was gone, leaving Marcus alone with the echoes of an impossible promise and the terrifying hope that perhaps, just perhaps, love could conquer Rome itself. The medicus returned, studying Marcus's face. So, the dangerous kind indeed. He moved to a locked cabinet, producing a small vial of milky liquid. Funny thing about poppy milk, in small doses, it brings sleep. In larger doses, sleep so deep a man seems dead. Easy mistake for an old medicus to make, leaving such a vial where a desperate gladiator might find it. Marcus stared at the old man. Why? Because I've patched up too many corpses that should have lived. Because that girl looks at you like my wife once looked at me before the fever took her. He set the vial on the table, just within reach, because maybe it's time someone escaped this bloody pit. The medicus shuffled toward the door, then paused. Of course, timing would be crucial. Too early, and the deception is discovered. Too late and, well, the Feast of Vulcan creates such chaos. Guards drinking, attention elsewhere. Shame if something were to happen during such confusion. He left without another word, abandoning Marcus to his thoughts and the small vial that promised either freedom or death. Outside he could hear the distant roar of Rome, that great beast that devoured its children for sport. But for the first time in 7 years, Marcus allowed himself to imagine a life beyond the arena's walls. A life where he could wake to Livia's smile instead of a guard's command, where his hands could learn to create instead of destroy. It was madness. It was impossible. It was hope, and for a man who'd forgotten how to hope, that was the most dangerous thing of all. The Feast of Vulcan dawned hot and smoke-filled, as Romans lit bonfires throughout the city to honor the god of fire and forge. In the Villa Aurelius, slaves scurried to prepare offerings, while Senator Gaius nursed both a wine-sick head and wounded pride. Livia moved through the morning rituals like a ghost, her mind entirely on the ludus across the city, where Marcus waited. You seem distracted, wife. Gaius's voice cut through her thoughts like a dull blade. He sat at the breakfast table, bloodshot eyes studying her with new suspicion. One might think you were elsewhere in spirit. The smoke bothers me, she replied carefully, not meeting his gaze. Perhaps I could remain home while you attend the temples, and miss displaying my devoted wife to Rome. His laugh was ugly. Oh no, my dear, after your performance at the arena, we must show the city that all is well in the house of Aurelius. You'll dress in your finest and smile as if your life depends on it. His hand shot out, gripping her wrist, because it does. She kept her face neutral even as her heart raced. Everything depended on being at the temple. Claudia had arranged for trusted slaves to be ready at the ludus, and the medicus would administer the poppy milk at precisely the right moment. But if Gaius suspected, of course, husband. She lowered her eyes in practiced submission. I live to serve. Betty released her, turning back to his wine. And speaking of service, I've arranged something special for after the feast. Your gladiator will face a new challenge. I've purchased 6 condemned men, all former soldiers. They'll fight him in waves, fresh fighters replacing the fallen, until he inevitably falls. Her blood chilled, but she forced herself to remain calm. The emperor seemed impressed with him. Is it wise to... The emperor will be in Ostia for 3 days. Gaius slammed his cup down. By the time he returns, your pet will be carrion, and I'll have found a new attraction to replace him. Perhaps female gladiators. I hear they die even more prettily than men. Livia murmured something appropriate and escaped to her chambers, where Claudia waited with trembling hands. My lady, I've had word from my nephew. The medicus is ready, but there's a problem. The ludus guards have been doubled. Your husband suspects something. Livia sank onto her couch. Of course he does. He's cruel, not stupid. What do we do? Livia's mind raced. They needed a distraction, something to draw the guards away. The fires, she said suddenly. The Vilban fires. What if one were to spread near the ludus? Not enough to truly threaten, but enough to require attention. Claudia's eyes widened. My lady, arson is what? Punishable by death. So is helping a slave escape. Livia stood, pacing. We've come too far to stop now. Can your nephew arrange it? Perhaps. His friend works at the oil merchant's shop near the ludus. An accident with lamp oil. Some sparks from the ceremonial fires. Do it. Livia gripped the older woman's hands. And Claudia, if this fails, if we're caught. I know, child. Claudia squeezed back. But I'd rather die trying to free you both than watch you wither away in this marble tomb. The hours crawled by like wounded soldiers. Livia, dressed in her finest stola, painted her face with careful precision, and played the perfect Roman matron as Gaius paraded her through the city. At each temple, she prayed, not to Vulcan but to any god who might listen. Venus for love's protection, Mercury for swift escape, Fortuna for luck they desperately needed. The sun reached its zenith. Across the city, in the ludus medical chambers, Marcus lay on his pallet as the medicus approached, with steady hands. Ready, boy? If I die, you won't. I've calculated the dose precisely. You'll seem dead for perhaps 2 hours, long enough for them to move you to the burial carts. The old man produced the vial. Your lady's servants will intercept the cart before it reaches the pits. After that, he shrugged. You're beyond my help. Marcus took the vial, staring at the milky liquid that would either free him or kill him. Tell her, if this fails, tell her she gave me more than I deserved. Tell her yourself when you wake. The medicus glanced toward the door. Quickly now, the guards change shift soon. Marcus raised the vial in a mock toast to the life he was leaving behind. The blood, the sand, the chains. Then he drank deeply, the bitter liquid coating his throat. Within moments, cold began creeping through his veins. Good luck, gladiator, the medicus whispered as Marcus's eyes fluttered closed. May you find the life you've earned. At the temple of Vulcan, Livia knelt beside her husband, pretending to pray while her heart hammered against her ribs. Any moment now, any moment, a shout from outside. Then another. Fire, fire near the Ludus. Worshippers scrambled to the windows. In the distance, black smoke rose against the afternoon sky. Not a large fire, but enough. Gaius cursed, barking orders at his guards to investigate, to ensure his property wasn't threatened. In the chaos, no one noticed Claudia slip away. Time moved like honey now, each moment stretching endlessly. Livia forced herself to remain calm, to play her part even as every instinct screamed at her to run. Gaius ranted about incompetent city guards, about the cost of damaged property, never suspecting his wife had orchestrated it all. An hour passed, then 2. The fire was controlled, the guards returned, and still no word. Had the plan failed? Had Marcus taken too much poppy milk? Had they been discovered? Livia's nails bit into her palms as she smiled and nodded at Gaius's increasingly drunk proclamations. Then finally, as afternoon bled into evening, a commotion at the temple doors. A slave Livia recognized from the ludus, face grave, with practiced sorrow. Senator Aurelius, I bear unfortunate news. Your gladiator, Marcus, he's dead, sir. Died of his wounds from yesterday's fight. The temple fell silent. Gaius blinked stupidly, wine cup halfway to his lips. Dead? Yes, Dominus. The medicus said his heart gave out. The damage was too great. The slave bowed low. The body has been taken for disposal with the other arena dead. For a moment Livia thought Gaius might celebrate. Then his face twisted with rage. Dead? He dares die before I could see him suffer properly. He hurled his cup against the wall, wine splattering like blood. Burn the body. I want nothing left of him. Not even ashes for the wind. Yes, Dominus. Livia let out a carefully calculated gasp, one hand to her throat. How terrible, she managed, while inside her heart sang. He'd done it. The first part of their impossible plan had worked. Terrible. Gaius rounded on her. You dare mourn that defiant dog. I mourn the waste of valuable property, she replied smoothly. As you taught me, husband, everything has a price. He studied her suspiciously, then laughed. Perhaps you're learning after all. Come, we'll finish the feast, then return home. I find myself in need of comfort. His leer left no doubt what kind of comfort he meant. Livia's stomach turned, but she nodded obediently. Just a few more hours of this charade. And as they left the temple, she caught sight of Claudia near the fountains. The briefest nod. All was well. Marcus lived. The cart had been intercepted. Even now he was being spirited to a safe house near the docks. Tomorrow, during the confusion of post-feast cleaning, she would slip away. A boat waited, passage already purchased, to Britannia, where Roman law held less sway. It would be dangerous, uncertain, a life of hardship compared to her current luxury. But it would be life, real life, with the man who'd chosen mercy in a world that rewarded only cruelty. The feast continued, Gaius growing drunker and more boastful as the night wore on. He spoke of buying new gladiators, of spectacles that would make Rome forget Marcus ever existed. Livia smiled and agreed and poured his wine with a generous hand, watching as he slowly poisoned himself into stupor. By the time they returned to the villa, he could barely walk. The slaves carried him to his chambers, where he collapsed into snoring unconsciousness. Livia stood in the doorway, looking at the man who'd made her life a misery for 2 years. Goodbye, husband, she whispered. May you find all the happiness you've earned. In her own chambers, she found Claudia already packing. Not much, only what they could carry without suspicion. Her mother's jewels sewn into the lining of a plain traveling cloak, a few precious scrolls, the wooden eagle Marcus had given her. He's safe, Claudia confirmed. Weak but conscious. He waits at the dock warehouse, and the ship sails with the dawn tide. New names, new lives. The older woman paused in her packing. It's not too late to reconsider. Once we leave, we can never return, Livia finished. I know. She moved to the window, looking out at Rome one last time. Do you know what the saddest part is, Claudia? I was born to this wealth, this power, this life of marble and silk, and I would trade it all for a single honest day with him. Then let's go.
Find that day. They slipped from the villa like shadows, 2 women among many servants busy with post-feast duties. No one questioned them, no one stopped them. Why would they? Livia Aurelius was a proper Roman wife. She would never do something as scandalous as choosing love over duty. The streets of Rome were quiet, most citizens sleeping off their celebrations. As they neared the docks, Livia's heart began to race. So close now, so close to freedom, to him, to Livia. The voice came from the shadows of the warehouse, weak but unmistakably his. Then Marcus stepped into the moonlight, and her composure shattered. She ran to him, careful of his wounds, but desperate for his touch. You mad, brave fool, he whispered, into her hair, as they embraced. You actually did it. We did it, she corrected, pulling back to study his face. He was pale, moving stiffly, but alive, gloriously alive. Although technically you're dead, how does it feel? Like being reborn.
His hands cupped her face with infinite tenderness. "Are you certain? Once we board that ship, I've never been more certain of anything." She kissed him softly, tasting freedom on his lips. "I love you, Marcus, whether in a palace or a hut, in silk or in rags. I love you, and I love you, my brave lady, my salvation." "No more lady," she said firmly. "Just Livia, just yours." A low whistle from Claudia warned them of approaching patrol. They melted back into the shadows, making their way to where the ship waited. As they boarded, Livia took one last look at Rome, that great beast that had tried to devour them both, but they had escaped its jaws. Love had proven stronger than chains, hope more powerful than fear. As the ship prepared to sail, Marcus wrapped his arms around her from behind, and they watched the eternal city fade into darkness. Somewhere in that maze of marble, Senator Gaius would wake to find his wife gone, his gladiator dead, his perfect Roman life shattered. But here, on a humble merchant vessel bound for unknown shores, two souls had found something worth more than all the gold in the empire. They had found each other. They had found freedom. They had found home. 6 months had passed since Rome faded into the horizon. The small cottage on the Britannia coast bore no resemblance to the Villa Aurelius, but Livia, who now went by the name Julia, had never been happier. She stood in the doorway watching Marcus, now called Lucius, repair their fishing nets as the sun painted the sea gold. "You're staring again," he said without looking up, a smile playing at his lips. "I'm admiring my husband's handiwork," she replied, still thrilled by the word. They'd been married by a traveling priest 3 months ago, a simple ceremony with only Claudia and a few local villagers as witnesses. No gold, no finery, just promises made and meant. These hands were made for swords, not nets. He held up his scarred fingers ruefully. "I'm afraid our dinner swims away more often than not." She crossed to him, taking those precious hands in hers. "These hands were made for whatever brings you peace. And if the fish escape, we have the vegetable garden. Oh yes, your war against the turnips continues." "They're winning," she admitted with a laugh. Who knew that growing food was harder than organizing dinner parties for 100 guests? He pulled her into his lap, nets forgotten. "Regrets? Never." She kissed him softly. "Though I do miss." A wave of nausea hit suddenly, sending her scrambling for the bucket they kept nearby. Marcus held her hair back, concern creasing his brow. "That's the 3rd time this week. We should find a healer." "No need." She wiped her mouth, turning back to him with eyes bright with tears and joy. "Marcus, Lucius, I know what ails me." Understanding dawned on his face like sunrise. "You're with child, our child." She guided his hand to her still flat belly. "I wanted to be certain before I told you." For a moment, he couldn't speak. Then she was crushed against his chest, his body shaking with silent sobs. "A child," he whispered. "I never thought, after all the death these hands have brought, now they'll bring life." She pulled back to see his face, laughing through her own tears. "Though fair warning, I know nothing of babies. We may have to ask Claudia for help." "A child," he repeated, wonder replacing the shadows that sometimes still haunted his eyes. "Our child, free-born, never to know chains or the arena." His expression suddenly grew fierce. "I'll protect you both. I swear it, Livia. No harm will come to." "Sure." She placed a finger on his lips. "We're safe here. The village accepts us. We have enough coin to last, and no one looks for dead men and runaway wives in this corner of the world." But even as she spoke, she noticed how his hand moved instinctively to where his sword would have hung. Some habits died hard. Some fears never fully faded. They'd built a good life here, a quiet life, but both knew it balanced on a knife's edge. One wrong person recognizing them, one message reaching Rome. "Come," she said, pulling him to his feet. "Claudia promised to teach me her mother's fish stew recipe. Perhaps we'll have better luck with purchased fish than caught ones. That evening, as they sat around their simple table, Claudia raised a cup of watered wine. To new life, she toasted, eyes twinkling, and to parents who'll no doubt spoil the child terribly. We'll be firm, Marcus protested. Discipline. You melt when the village children ask for stories, Livia pointed out. Our child will rule this household within a week. Stories. Claudia leaned forward. Our fierce gladiator tells stories, Marcus flushed. They ask about Rome. I tell them, adventure, heroes fighting monsters, princes rescuing maidens. Leaving out the blood, I hope, Livia teased. I make the monsters very clearly monsters. His voice grew quiet. I want them to believe in heroes, to know that sometimes good triumphs. It did, Livia said softly, taking his hand. It does. Later, as they lay entwined in their small bed, Marcus traced patterns on her belly. What shall we name it? If it's a girl, Claudia, she's earned that honor. Livia smiled at his approving nod. And if it's a boy, he was quiet for a long moment. Felix. It means fortunate, because any child born to love instead of duty, to choice instead of chains, that child is fortunate indeed. Felix, she agreed. Our fortunate child, but fortune, as any Roman knew, was a fickle goddess. The stranger arrived with the autumn rains, a merchant, he claimed, traveling the coast with goods from Gaul. But Marcus noticed how his eyes lingered on faces, how his questions probed just a bit too deeply. When the man asked about new arrivals to the village, about a couple who'd come from the south, Marcus felt the old instincts flare to life. That night he sat sharpening the fishing knife, with movements that spoke more of swords than scaling. We should leave. Marcus, he's looking for someone. His eyes are too sharp for a simple merchant. Livia, now heavy with child, moved awkwardly to sit beside him. You can't know that. We've been safe for months. Why would? Because men like your husband don't forgive. Don't forget. He set down the knife, pulling her close. I won't risk you, either of you. I can't travel far like this. The baby, then I'll deal with him. No. Her voice turned sharp. No more blood. We left that behind. She cupped his face, forcing him to meet her eyes. Promise me, no matter what happens, no more killing. He wanted to argue, but the plea in her eyes stopped him. I promise, but if he threatens, we'll handle it together, as we always have. The next morning brought answers none of them wanted. The stranger stood in their garden, no longer pretending to be a merchant. His hand rested on a sword hilt, and two more men emerged from the tree line. Did you really think you could run forever? The man's smile was cold. Senator Aurelius pays well for information, even better for revenge. Marcus stepped in front of Livia, his body coiled for violence despite having no weapon. I'm dead. You've wasted a journey. Oh, I think not. You see, the senator received interesting information. A gladiator's body that disappeared before burning. A wife who vanished the same night. Gold missing from hidden coffers. The bounty hunter's eyes fixed on Livia. He wants you back, lady. Alive. The gladiator, well, dead men can die again. Please. Livia stepped around Marcus despite his attempt to stop her. I'll go. I'll return willingly. Just leave him alone. No. Marcus's roar shook the windows. You'll have to kill me first. That can be arranged. The bounty hunter drew his sword. The senator said you were soft now. That love had made you weak. Shall we test that? What happened next would be debated by the villagers for years. Marcus moved like lightning, the fishing knife appearing in his hand as if by magic. But he didn't throw it at the bounty hunter. Instead, he threw himself sideways, knocking Livia to the ground as a crossbow bolt whistled through where she'd been standing. The fourth man, hidden until now, was already reloading. The three swordsmen advanced, and Marcus, armed with only a fishing knife and 7 months of peace, prepared to face them. Run, he told Livia. Take Claudia and run. Never. She struggled to her feet, grabbing the garden hoe. We face this together. The fight was brief and brutal. Marcus fought like a man possessed, but he was outnumbered, outarmed, and protecting too many. The fishing knife found one throat before a sword found his shoulder. He kept fighting, kept moving, kept placing himself between the attackers and Livia. Then she screamed, not in fear, but in pain. She doubled over, water pooling at her feet. The baby, stressed by fear and violence, had decided now was the time. Livia, Marcus's distraction cost him. A sword pommel cracked against his skull, sending him to his knees. Through blurring vision, he saw the bounty hunter advancing on his wife. No, Claudia appeared like an avenging fury, the kitchen's largest knife in her hands. "You'll not touch her." What followed was chaos. Villagers, drawn by the commotion, flooded the garden. The blacksmith with his hammer, the fishermen with their harpoons, even the baker's wife with her rolling pin. They'd accepted these strangers into their community, and Britannia folk protected their own. The bounty hunters, faced with an angry mob, and with one already dead, chose wisdom over gold. They fled, but not before their leader shouted back, "This isn't over. The senator knows where you are now." But Marcus heard none of it. He crawled to Livia, who lay gasping on the ground as Claudia tried to calm her. "The baby," she panted. "It's coming. Get the midwife," someone shouted. Hands lifted. Marcus tended his wounds, but he fought them off, needing to be near her. "I'm here," he promised, gripping her hand as she squeezed through another contraction. "I'm here, my love." "Too early," she gasped. "It's too early." The midwife arrived, taking charge with calm efficiency. Hours passed in a blur of pain and fear. Marcus had faced death 100 times in the arena, but nothing compared to the terror of watching Livia struggle to bring their child into the world. Then, as dawn broke, a thin cry split the air. "A son," the midwife announced, placing the tiny bundle on Livia's chest, small, but fighting, like his parents. Felix, their fortunate child. Marcus stared at the tiny perfect fingers, the shock of dark hair, and felt his heart break and rebuild itself in the same moment. "He's beautiful," he whispered. "He's ours," Livia corrected, tears streaming down her face. "Our free-born son." But even as they marveled at new life, the bounty hunter's words echoed. The senator knew they'd been found, and Gaius Aurelius was not a man who forgot. "We'll have to leave," Marcus said quietly. "As soon as you can travel." "I know." She looked around the cottage that had been their sanctuary. "But not yet. Let us have this moment. This perfect moment where we're just a family." He kissed her forehead, then their sons. "A family," he agreed. "Whatever comes, we face it as a family." Outside, the village stood guard. They'd bled for these strangers who'd become neighbors, and they'd do so again, because sometimes, in the face of empire's cruelty, ordinary people did extraordinary things. But empires had long memories and longer reaches. And somewhere in Rome, a senator plotted revenge that would make the arena's blood sports seem kind by comparison. Winter had settled over Britannia like a shroud. In their cottage, now fortified with the help of villagers, Marcus taught Felix to walk, while Livia mended nets. The boy was 8 months old, sturdy despite his early arrival, with his mother's golden eyes and his father's determined spirit. "Papa!" Felix cried, taking 3 wobbling steps before tumbling into Marcus's waiting arms. "Well done, little warrior." Marcus lifted him high, earning delighted squeals. But his eyes never stopped scanning the windows, the door. 4 months had passed since the bounty hunter's attack. 4 months of waiting, watching, wondering when Rome would strike again. "He's too young to be a warrior," Livia said softly. "Let him be a child first." "I was 6 when I learned to hold a sword." Marcus set Felix down, watching him crawl toward his wooden toys. "In Germania, we believed. We're not in Germania, or Rome." She crossed to him, wrapping her arms around his waist. "We're here, in this moment, with our son laughing and safe. That's all that matters." He pulled her close, breathing in the scent of her hair. She was right, of course, but the warrior in him couldn't quiet the voice that whispered danger approach. The villagers had spotted strangers in the forest, ships that anchored offshore but sent no boats, signs that patient hunters circled their prey. A knock at the door made them both freeze. Marcus moved Livia behind him, hand reaching for the sword hidden beneath the table. But it was only Thomas, the blacksmith, his broad face creased with worry. Lucius, he used Marcus's assumed name carefully. There's something you need to see. Down at the harbor, they bundled Felix warmly and followed Thomas through the village. The fishing boats bobbed at their moorings, but it was the ship anchored beyond them that made Marcus's blood run cold. A Roman galley, its red sails furled but its intent clear. Arrived this morning, Thomas said quietly. No one's come ashore yet, but they will. Marcus studied the ship with a tactician's eye. At least 30 men aboard, soldiers, not bounty hunters this time. The village council meets tonight, Thomas said. We'll discuss defenses. You've become one of us, Lucius. We don't abandon our own. No, Marcus's voice was firm. You've done enough. This is my fight. Like hell it is. The blacksmith's hand fell heavy on Marcus's shoulder. You think we don't know who you really are? The gladiator who chose mercy? The woman who chose love over luxury? Your stories become legend in these parts. Legends get people killed, Marcus said grimly. Sometimes, but sometimes they inspire people to stand up, to say no more. Thomas's eyes were fierce. We've all got stories, friend. Reasons we're here at the edge of the world instead of bowing to Rome. Let us stand with you. That night, as the village prepared for siege, a different visitor came to their door. Claudia answered, gasping at the cloaked figure, revealed in the firelight. By the gods, Quintus, her nephew, the boy who'd helped them escape the Colosseum, stood shivering on their threshold. But he was a boy no longer. Months of hard travel had aged him, and his eyes held terrible knowledge. Aunt Claudia, he croaked, I had to warn you. The senator, he's not just sending soldiers. He's coming himself. They brought him inside, wrapping him in blankets as his story spilled out. Gaius had become obsessed, his rage feeding on itself until even the emperor had grown concerned. He'd spent a fortune tracking them, called in every favor, turned their escape into a personal vendetta that consumed him. He brings 50 men, Quintus said, clutching the warm wine Livia pressed into his hands. And worse, he brings papers, legal documents. He's had the marriage to Marcus declared invalid, claimed she was bewitched. In Roman law, she's still his wife. The child is illegitimate. He can take them both. Over my dead body, Marcus growled. That's the idea. Quintus met his eyes. He's promised the men bonuses for your head. But Domina Livia and the child, he wants them alive. Says he'll raise the boy as a slave, let him grow up knowing his father died a criminal. Livia made a sound like a wounded animal, clutching Felix tighter. The baby, sensing his mother's distress, began to cry. There's more. Quintus continued miserably. He knows about the village helping you. He plans to burn it, make an example, show what happens to those who harbor fugitives. Then we leave, Livia said immediately. Tonight, we'll not bring destruction on these good people. To where? Marcus asked gently. He'll follow us anywhere, and you've seen how Felix does with hard travel. The cold, then what? Her voice cracked. Do we just wait for him to arrive? Let him take us? Marcus was quiet for a long moment, his mind working through possibilities like he once worked through arena strategies. Finally he spoke. No, we don't wait. We choose the ground, make our stand. Lucius, my name is Marcus. He stood, and for the first time in months, she saw the gladiator fully surface. I am Marcus Aurelius Germanicus, son of chieftains, victor of 100 battles. I ran because I chose love over war. But if war comes for my family, his hand found the hidden sword. Then I'll remind Rome why they once called me the shadow of death. You promised, Livia whispered. No more killing. I promised to try. He knelt before her, taking her free hand. And I have tried, my love. Gods know I've tried. But some men only understand blood. Your husband is one of them. There might be another way, Claudia said suddenly. All eyes turned to her. The old laws. Trial by combat. If the senator claims ownership, Marcus can challenge. Not as a slave, but as a free man defending his family. Gaius would never agree. He would if publicly challenged. His pride wouldn't let him refuse. Claudia's eyes glinted. And if the village chieftain officiates, if we make it formal, it's still 50 men against us. Thomas pointed out. Not if the challenge is heard first. Not if we make it about honor rather than law. Marcus's mind raced. Quintus, How long before they arrive? 2 days, maybe 3. The senator travels slowly, with comfort. Then we have time. Marcus looked around the room at these people who'd become family. Send riders to the neighboring villages. Tell them Rome comes to crush Britannia. Freedom. See how many will answer. Meanwhile, we prepare. The next day, the village transformed. Women and children were evacuated to the hill caves. Men sharpened whatever weapons they had. Marcus worked with those who could fight, teaching them Roman tactics, how to use the terrain against armored soldiers. But it was Livia who surprised them all. I won't hide, she announced, emerging from their cottage in traveling clothes, Felix strapped to her back. If this is about me, I should face it. Livia, no. I've been property all my life. Her voice rang with quiet steel. First my father's, then my husband's. Even our love, beautiful as it is, began with me as possession to be fought over. No more. She touched Marcus's face. I choose to stand beside you, not behind you, as your equal, as your wife, as Felix's mother. Let Gaius see what he truly faces. Not a runaway slave and stolen property, but a family that chose each other. Marcus pulled her close, careful of Felix between them. You humble me. I love you. There's a difference. She smiled, though tears threatened. Besides, someone needs to keep you from doing anything too stupidly heroic. On the second night, as they made final preparations, Marcus found himself standing over Felix's cradle. The boy slept peacefully, tiny fist clutching the wooden gladiator figure Thomas had carved for him. I'm sorry, Marcus whispered. Sorry I couldn't give you a peaceful life. Sorry my past followed us here. He touched the boy's cheek with one scarred finger. But I swear, you'll grow up free, whatever the cost. No apologies. Livia appeared beside him, slipping her hand into his. We gave him life. We gave him love. We gave him parents who chose freedom over chains. That's more than either of us had. Dawn of the third day brought the sound of marching feet. Roman discipline, Roman steel, the weight of empire coming to crush those who dared defy it. At the head rode Gaius Aurelius, fatter than before, but with eyes that burned with mad fury. The village square had been cleared, a rough circle drawn. The chieftain, an old warrior named Brennus, stood ready. Around the edges, villagers and fighters from 3 neighboring settlements waited with weapons at hand. They were outnumbered 2 to 1, but they stood firm. Gaius dismounted, his armor gleaming despite the journey. His eyes found Livia immediately, and his smile was a terrible thing. Wife, you've led me quite a chase. I'm not your wife. Livia stepped forward, Felix visible in his sling on her back. I never was. Wives are partners, not property. Roman law says otherwise. His gaze shifted to Marcus. And you, death wasn't permanent enough. This time I'll have your head on a spike. I challenge you. Marcus's voice cut through the morning air like a blade. Here, before witnesses, single combat. If I win, you renounce all claims and leave these lands forever. If you win, he swallowed hard. They go with you willingly. Marcus, no. Livia gasped, but Gaius laughed, a sound like grinding stone. You think I'd dirty my hands with a slave's blood? Choose my champion. He gestured to his men. Any of them could cut you down. Then you're a coward as well as a tyrant. Marcus raised his voice so all could hear. The great Senator Aurelius, so weak he needs others to fight for him, even against a mere slave. The insult hit as intended. Gaius's face purpled. You dare? I dare because I'm free. Something you'll never understand. Marcus drew his sword, the steel singing. But perhaps that's why you hate us so much. We found something you with all your gold could never buy. We found love. We found choice. We found a life worth living. Pretty words from a dead man. Gaius drew his own blade, and Livia's heart sank. Her husband had been trained by the best masters gold could buy. He might be older, softer, but he was still dangerous. Very well, single combat. When you fall, I'll raise your son to curse your name. They cleared a space, Romans and Britons forming a circle. Brennus spoke the formal words, making it legal by both laws. Then steel met steel, and the final fight began. Gaius was skilled but cruel, used to opponents who feared him. Marcus was desperate but controlled, fighting not for glory but for everything that mattered. They circled, tested, struck and parried in the ancient dance of death. You've gotten slow, Gaius taunted, as his blade scored Marcus's arm. Soft. Love has made you weak. Love has made me strong. Marcus pressed forward, his attacks gaining fury. Strong enough to show mercy. Strong enough to change. Strong enough to die free rather than live as your slave. The fight intensified. Both men bled now, both breathing hard. Around them the crowd watched in tense silence. Livia stood with white knuckles gripping Claudia's hand, whispering prayers to any god who might listen. Then Gaius made a mistake. Driven by rage, he overextended on a killing thrust. Marcus flowed aside, and his counter-strike was perfect. The blade pierced Gaius's side, sending him to his knees. Marcus stood over his fallen tormentor, sword at his throat. The moment stretched, balanced on the edge of decision. "Do it," Gaius snarled. "Prove you're still the animal I bought." Marcus looked at him. This man who'd caused so much pain, who'd pursued them across the world, who threatened everything he loved. Then he looked at Livia, at their son, at the life they'd built. He stepped back, lowering his sword. "No," he said simply. "I choose mercy. Again. Always." He turned to
the watching soldiers. "Your master lives, but he's beaten. Take him home. Tell Rome that Britannia stands free." For a moment, nobody moved. Then one soldier saluted, not the Roman salute but the gesture of respect one warrior gives another. Others followed. They gathered their wounded leader and began the long march back to their ships. But Gaius, helped to his feet, had one last cruelty to unleash. None saw him pull the hidden dagger. None had time to cry warning. He lunged with a madman's strength, the blade aimed not at Marcus, but at Livia. "If I can't have you, no one will." Time slowed. Marcus turned, saw death coming for his love, and made the only choice he could. He threw himself between them, taking the dagger meant for her. It pierced ease, finding the gaps in his armor with fatal precision. "No!" Livia's scream shattered the morning. Marcus fell, blood spreading beneath him. Gaius, his final strength spent, collapsed beside him. But Marcus had eyes only for Livia as she cradled his head in her lap. "My love," he whispered, raising a trembling hand to her face. "You is Felix. We're safe. We're safe, you brave, stupid man." Tears ran unchecked down her cheeks. Why did you?" "Because." He managed a smile despite the pain. "Some things worth dying for. You, him, freedom," he coughed, tasting copper. "Besides, I promised. No more killing. Kept my promise. Don't leave me." She pressed her forehead to his. "Please. I can't do this without you. You can. You're strongest person I know." His eyes found Felix, who watched with solemn baby eyes. Tell him his father chose love. Always. Choose." Around them the crowd had gone silent. Romans and Britons alike removed their helmets, honoring a man who'd chosen mercy even unto death. Gaius lay dying nearby, but no one mourned him. All eyes were on the gladiator, who'd finally found something worth both living and dying for. "Livia," Marcus breathed, his voice fading. "Thank you for showing me I was more than death, for loving the man beneath the monster." "You were never a monster." She kissed him softly, tasting tears and blood. "You were my hero, my love, my Marcus." He smiled at his true name on her lips. Then his eyes found the morning sky, seeing something beyond the grey clouds. "Look," he whispered. "The sun breaks through. Felix, fortunate. Our fortunate son." His hand fell. His eyes stayed open but saw no more. Livia held him, rocking slowly, keening her grief to the uncaring sky. Felix began to cry, sensing the loss he was too young to understand. Claudia wept. Thomas bowed his head. Even hardened soldiers found themselves blinking away tears. Marcus Aurelius Germanicus, the shadow of death, the gladiator who chose mercy, died as he had lived in freedom, protecting what he loved. The aftermath was swift. With both Gaius and their champion dead,
The Roman soldiers had no heart for slaughter. They took their senator's body and left, carrying word back to Rome of what had transpired. The emperor, when he heard, declared the matter settled. A man who died free could not be reclaimed as a slave. His widow and child were citizens of Britannia now, beyond Roman reach. But for Livia, kneeling in the mud with Marcus's blood on her hands, such pronouncements meant nothing. The man who'd taught her courage, who'd shown her love, could conquer empire, who'd given her a son and a life worth living, was. Yet as she looked up through her tears, she saw the entire village kneeling around them, Romans and Britons together, honoring a man who'd bridged both worlds. And in her arms, Felix reached out with chubby fingers to touch his father's face one last time. "Remember him," she whispered to her son. "Remember that your father was strong enough to be gentle, brave enough to show mercy, and loved us enough to give everything so we could be free." The sun broke fully through the clouds then, bathing the scene in golden light, and though her heart was shattered, Livia found the strength to stand. She had a son to raise, a life to live, a legacy of love to honor. Marcus had kept all his promises. Now it was her turn. The morning mist clung to the Britannia coastline as a young man practiced with his sword on the beach. His movements were fluid, precise, speaking of years of training, but there was something different about his technique. Where most warriors pressed every advantage, he showed restraint. Where others would strike to kill, he struck to disable. "Your father would be proud," Livia said from behind him. Felix turned, lowering his blade with a smile that was pure. Marcus. At 15 he had grown tall and strong, with his mother's golden eyes and his father's quiet strength. "You think so? I know so." She moved closer, her hair now touched with silver but her bearing still regal. "Though he'd probably tease you about that last flourish." "Economy of movement, boy," she mimicked Marcus's teaching voice, making them both laugh. "Thomas says I'm ready for the warrior trials," Felix said, sheathing his sword. "Says I could lead our militia. Thomas says many things. What do you say?" Felix looked out at the sea, thoughtful. "I say, I want to be ready if I'm ever needed. But I hope I'm never needed." He turned back to her. "Is that cowardly? That's wisdom." She touched his cheek, seeing so much of Marcus in him. "Your father was the greatest warrior Rome ever produced. But his greatest victories were the fights he chose not to have." They walked back toward the village together, passing the monument the community had erected years ago. A simple stone, carved with Marcus's likeness and a single word, mercy. "Tell me again," Felix said softly. About the end, Livia had told this story countless times, but she never refused. "He had your grandfather at his mercy, the man who'd tormented us, hunted us, threatened you. One stroke would have ended it all. But your father chose to lower his sword. He said, 'I choose mercy,' again, always. And then grandfather attacked you anyway." "Yes, but your father was ready. He knew the risk of mercy. He accepted it." She stopped walking, ensuring Felix met her eyes. "That's the lesson, my son. Mercy isn't weakness. It's not naive. It's a choice made with full knowledge of the cost. Your father died free, having never betrayed who he chose to be." "I miss him," Felix admitted. "I know I was just a baby, but sometimes I swear I remember warmth, safety, his voice." "He lives in you," Livia said simply, "in your compassion, your strength, your choice to train for defense, not conquest." She smiled. "And in your terrible jokes, those are definitely his." They were interrupted by running feet. Young Claudia, named for the woman who'd raised her after her namesake passed 5 winters ago, came racing up the path. At 13, she was all knees and elbows, but her eyes were sharp with intelligence. "Mama, Felix, ships in the harbor, Roman ships." Livia's hand tightened on Felix's arm, old fears rising, but her son remained calm. "How many?" "Just one, a small galley. They're flying the diplomatic flag." They hurried to the village, where a crowd had already gathered. The Roman ship had indeed anchored peacefully, and a single boat approached the shore. In it sat a man in senator's robes, accompanied by just 2 guards. The man who stepped onto the beach was perhaps 30, with intelligent eyes and an earnest face. He looked around at the gathered villagers, some hostile, some curious, before his gaze found Livia. "Lady Livia Aurelius?" he asked formally. "Just Livia. I haven't been Aurelius for 15 years. Of course, my apologies." He bowed deeply. "I am Senator Quintus Maximus. I've come a very long way to find you. If Rome thinks to press old claims," Thomas stepped forward, hand on his hammer. "Peace, friend. I come not for Rome but for myself." The senator's eyes moved to Felix, and to meet the son of Marcus Germanicus. "You knew my father." Felix couldn't hide his interest. "I saw him fight once, when I was a boy. He spared an opponent who had a son my age in the crowd. It changed my view of many things." Quintus smiled sadly. "I've spent years studying his life. A Germanic prince, enslaved, who became the greatest gladiator in Roman history, who chose mercy in a world that rewarded cruelty, who died free." "Why are you here?" Livia's voice held steel. Rome had taken too much for her to trust easily. "Because Rome is changing, lady. Slowly, painfully, but changing. There are those of us who believe the empire's strength lies not in blood and conquest, but in law and justice. We've instituted reforms, limitations on slavery, rights for gladiators. Some call it the Marcus laws, though not openly." "Pretty words," Thomas spat. "But what do you want?" Quintus reached into his robes, producing a sealed scroll. "I want to right an old wrong." This document, signed by the emperor himself, formally recognizes Felix as the legitimate son and heir of Marcus Aurelius Germanicus. It grants him full Roman citizenship and, he paused, restores his father's true title, Prince of the Charisi tribe. Stunned silence greeted this announcement. Felix stared at the scroll as if it might bite. What? Your father's lands are gone, conquered long ago, but the title remains, as does a considerable sum set aside by those who believe his story should be remembered." Quintus held out the scroll. "You are no fugitive's bastard, young man. You are the son of a prince and a consul's daughter. Rome acknowledges you." "Rome killed him," Felix said flatly. "Yes, to our eternal shame." Quintus didn't flinch from the truth. But perhaps his son might help ensure such tragedies don't repeat. Felix looked to his mother. Livia studied the senator's face, years of hard-won wisdom reading his sincerity. Finally, she nodded. Felix took the scroll, but didn't open it. "I accept this acknowledgement, but I am not Roman. I am Britannian. My father died to ensure that." He straightened, looking very much like Marcus in that moment. "But if Rome truly wishes to honor his memory, then live by his example. Show mercy, choose justice over strength. Remember that true power lies not in the ability to kill, but in the wisdom to spare." "Well spoken." Quintus bowed again. "There is one more thing." He gestured to his guards, who brought forth a wrapped bundle. "This was recovered from the old arena. We thought it should come home." Felix unwrapped the bundle carefully, gasping at what lay within. A gladiator's sword, worn but well maintained. On the pommel, scratched by a careful hand, were the words, "Choose love." "He carved that after meeting your mother," Quintus explained. "The arena keepers saved it when they heard he'd died. Said it didn't belong in that place of death anymore." Livia touched the sword with shaking fingers, remembering the man who'd wielded it. Then she looked at her son, this young man who carried Marcus's strength, but had been raised in freedom and love. "What will you do with it?" she asked. Felix hefted the blade, feeling its weight, its history. Then he walked to his father's monument. With careful precision, he drove the sword into the earth, before the stone, where it stood like a guardian. "Let it rest," he said. "A reminder that the greatest warriors are those who can put down their swords." He turned back to the senator. "Thank Ro. Thank the emperor for his gesture, but tell him too that Marcus Germanicus's true monument isn't a restored title or recovered gold. It's the idea that mercy is stronger than violence, that love conquers fear, that even a slave can choose to be more than his chains, and that choice, Livia added softly, can change the world. Senator Quintus stayed for the evening meal, sharing stories of the changes in Rome, of the gradual shift in attitudes. As night fell, he prepared to leave, but paused at the shore. "You've raised a remarkable son, lady," he told Livia. "Marcus Germanicus would be proud." "He is," she replied with quiet certainty. "I feel him sometimes, in the wind off the sea, in Felix's laughter, in every small act of kindness in this village he died defending." She smiled. "He kept his promise, you see. He chose mercy to the very end. And in doing so, he ensured his son would grow up in a world where such choices are possible." The senator departed with the tide, carrying back word of what he'd found. In Rome, the story would grow, of the gladiator's son who chose peace, who honored his father's legacy, not through vengeance, but through virtue. But in the small Britannian village, life continued simply. Felix trained young warriors in defense, not aggression. Livia served as a wise counselor, her Roman education and hard-won wisdom guiding the community. Claudia the Younger grew into a fierce defender of justice, inspired by the tales of her namesake's courage. And sometimes on quiet evenings, Livia would stand by Marcus's monument, hand resting on the sword he'd finally been able to put down. She would tell him of their son's kindness, his strength, his choice to be a protector, rather than a conqueror. She would speak of the life they'd built from the ashes of tragedy. Not the life they'd planned, but beautiful nonetheless. "You did it, my love," she would whisper to the wind. "You broke the cycle. Our son is free, not just from chains, but from the hatred that forges them. He chooses love, as you taught him, as you taught us all." The waves would whisper back, and sometimes, just sometimes, she swore she could hear his voice in them. "Thank you for showing me I could be more than death, for loving the man beneath the gladiator, for keeping our promise." And Livia would smile through her tears, knowing that though Marcus's body lay beneath Britannian soil, his spirit soared free, in every act of mercy, every choice of love over fear, every hand that reached to lift rather than strike down. The gladiator who chose mercy had died, but his legacy lived on, growing stronger with each passing year, proving that sometimes the greatest victories are won not in the arena, but in the quiet courage of choosing to be more than what the world expects. In the end, love had conquered all, not through force or grand gestures, but through the simple, daily choice to be better than yesterday, to show mercy, to choose love, again, always, forever.